So we fixed the issue with updating movies. However, currently we cannot delete a movie. So if I delete this movie, nothing happens. Here on the network tab, you can see our request failed with error 403, which means forbidden. This is because I have implemented the backend of this application such that only admins can delete a movie. Before I show you how to fix this problem, let's have a quick look at the backend implementation. So here in our Node project, inside the routes folder, let's take a look at the movies module. Here on line 67, we're setting up a route handler. So we're telling Express, which is the framework used to build this backend application, that, hey, if you get a delete request at our movies endpoint, make sure that the client is authenticated and is an admin. So this auth and admin that you see here, these are two functions. We refer to these functions as middleware functions. Let's have a quick look at the implementation of these. So back in the project, inside the middleware folder, let's take a look at auth.js. So you can see auth is a function. In this function, first, we check our config to see if authentication is enabled or not. If it's disabled, we simply pass control to the next middleware function. Otherwise, we read this header from the request, that is our x-auth-token header. If we don't have a token, we return a response with status 401, which means unauthorized. And here's our custom message, access denied, no token provided. Otherwise, if we do have a token, we need to validate it. So over the next few lines, we try to validate the token. And if it's valid, we pass control to the next middleware function. Otherwise, we return a 400 error to the client, which means invalid token. So technically 400 represents bad requests. So we're telling the client, hey, this is a bad request because you sent us an invalid token. So this is our auth middleware function. Now let's take a look at our admin middleware function. So once again, in the middleware folder, this is admin. Here you can see this is also a function. At the beginning of this function, we check our configuration. If authentication is disabled, we simply pass control. We don't care. We don't do anything. Otherwise, we check to see if the current user is an admin. So our user has a property called isAdmin. If this is faulty, we return a response with this status 403 with this message, access denied. And this is exactly what we got here. 403, which in standard HTTP terms means forbidden. And here's the message that we included in the body of the request. So in this case, our client did send a valid JSON web token, but the current user is not an admin, and that's why the server didn't allow this operation. So how can we fix this issue? Well, we need to go back to our database and set this property of our user object to true. So here in MongoDB Compass, this is my user account. Let's edit this and add a new property called isAdmin. We set it to true. Now note that by default, the value is a string. We need to change that to a Boolean and then update. So now I made this user account an admin, so I should be able to delete a movie. However, if we try to delete this movie, it still doesn't work. Let me show you why. Back in our local storage, I'm going to copy our JSON web token, take it to jwt.io and decode it. So this is the payload of our token. We have ID, name, and email. These are the properties of the user that are included in this token. So when we send this token to the server decodes this, it extracts these properties, and with this, it constructs the user object. This user object does not have the admin property because this token was generated before we updated this user in the database. So to solve this issue, we need to log out, log back in again, we'll get a new token, and when we decode that token, we will see that this user is an admin. So back in the application, let's log out and log back in. All right, now we're logged in. Here's our new token. Let's copy this. Back to jwt.io. Let's paste that here. and look at the payload. Now we have this property, isAdmin to true. With this, we should be able to delete a movie. So, back in our application, delete, beautiful. Now, what if a malicious user who is not an admin gets their token from the local storage, brings it here, edits it, set their isAdmin property to true, and then put the token back in the local storage? Well, that wouldn't work because, as I told you before, every token has a digital signature, and this signature is generated based on the content of this token. So if we make any changes to this payload, if we add one extra character or remove one character, this signature needs to be regenerated. And in order to generate this signature, we need a private key. This private key is stored on the server. So unless a hacker can access the server, they cannot regenerate this digital signature. And one last thing before we finish this lecture. In this demo, I manually made this user an admin. In your applications, you might have a complete user interface for managing users and their permissions. That's beyond the scope of this course. But generally speaking, the first time you deploy an application, you should have at least one admin user. You may manually make someone admin by connecting to the database, or you may automate this using a script.